Uh, now the year is 2023. Now, for anybody on screen here, if I could have started in my youth, I could have read any number of a bunch of science fiction books that started with that sentence. Um, and it would have been science fiction. Now it's reality. So, ladies, welcome, and all the viewers, welcome to 2023. My God.
We made it.
Yay!
Think about it. 100 years ago, you know,
Roaring 20s.
And most of our parents were born in the roaring 20s. So it's kind of fun. But anyway, I'm Bob Brown, and I have got with me some incredible people, old friends. Yeah, let's get them cameras straight there.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Okay, but we got Joyce-Reynolds Ward. Now, Joyce has been, and good morning, Facebook user. See, sometimes on the comment section, if you go to the right of your screen there, you'll see chat, and you can see all the people that are commenting. But Joyce is somebody who's been writing since the Roaring 20s.
Bob!
Hey, we're going to be in the... Hey, if we do this right, it's going to be the Roaring 20s, right? No, Joyce has... she has made Abusing Rabbits an art.
Oh, Bob!
You remember that?
Very, very well.
If I had an image of that, I'd share screen. Now,
it's a darn good thing you don't.
And then with us, we have essentially one of the founding goddesses of B-Cube Press. She was with us from the beginning when we said, hey, why don't we do an anthology? If we do it good, we can have it out by Trump's 100th day in office. And it was Trump's second day in office at the time. And Phil said, oh, sure, I think that's a great idea, Bob. Let me help you.
Boy, you were a dumb cookie.
Well, actually, the conversation was quite a bit longer. And the 100-day deal didn't show up until after I had agreed to do the anthology. And I nearly shot him.
That was very clever of you, Bob, really.
As when we were sitting, I had breakfast with the Bane editor,
Tony Weisskopf.
Tony, yeah. Gosh, what a gem to have in the universe is Tony. And I was pitching a book that Phil and I had written together, and I could watch Tony's eyes glaze over. Literally.
That's always bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not how you want to see your editor or the editor looking. And I said, well, I do have this other book. And I talked to Tony. She started getting interested. And then I had to go tell Phil that I just signed her up to be co-author of a novel.
It's good for her, these little shots.
Actually,
rolling.
Phil's fun that way.
Already started working on the book with him, and and the rough draft was almost done at that point. But so it wasn't quite a surprise. But yes, he could sell used cars to a used car salesman, and I don't need a car.
Well, I do know this. It was a great run because the book sold rather nicely. And now we're getting ready this next year to put out the sequel and the original re-release with a better
different
cover.
Small press that shall not be named.
Yeah. Good. But then, and I don't want to leave out, and I can't say we saved the best for last, because if I had to say which of you guys were the best, I would just turn my camera off and walk away.
Here we are, the three. He has a golden apple that he has to award. This is all going to work out great. You see it?
Oh no, it's going to fall out of the back of my backpack, and while you guys are picking it up, I'm walking away. But Brenda, now we have with us also Brenda Clough. Brenda, you've been writing for a long time. I didn't realize just how much you had published until I had you on the show a long time ago, and I was really looking you up, and it was like, holy cow. And here I'm going to flash the cover of your most latest, and you can tell us about it.
Well, this one is coming out in 2023, so this is, I guess, is the cover reveal. Last year, and I guess I could blame COVID for this, I wrote 3 novels, and this is one of them. I wrote this book and the next one, which is, there's also the cover is somewhere around here. And they're both historical fantasy novels set in the 1950s. And they're, what can I say about them? This is a book about healing. The one that Adorn His Head is a book about healing. And I don't actually plan these things all that well. They just sort of roar into my head and I write them down. So this is one of those books, and you just let it all be. I'm way over on the pants side of the spectrum, so I just write it down and then there it is. But it's actually quite nice. It's very organized in a nice tight way. It takes place in exactly 10 years, and it's about it's an Odysseus story. The soldier is finding his way back home after the war.
Now, it's a good book. I beta read it. It's a good book.
And did you say you set this book up?
The sequel is amazing.
The sequel, A Deal in Her Pocket. Who was it? It might have been you, Phil, or it might have been Joyce, who challenged me to write it as to the pure romantic novel format. And I don't usually corset myself in with a plot in this way, but it wanted to do it, so I let it do it, and it hits all of the proper things that happen in a romance novel. You know, we meet and the relationship goes up and down and around, and we finally achieve our HEA, our happily ever after.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys a question, because you just sparked something. You said it was set in the 60s?
50s, 1950s.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's before my time.
Not Frank Sinatra. The Coasters, a white sport coat and a pink carnation. Elvis. So everything is sort of they moved from the 1940s to the 1950s, and all the characters, of course, were born in the 20s and 30s because they have to be alive to have they have to be adults to have all these R-rated adventures.
The Roaring 20s were just yesterday.
Well, but you know, the huge divide of World War II, that's the one when we made the leap to the atomic age. And in a sense, everything before that point is sort of like over. And I don't know, we are old enough to remember the 1950s when everyone said, all that stuff, it's over. We're not doing that anymore. You know, all of that stuff is, we're doing rock and roll and wearing saddle shoes. We are no longer back there doing what we were doing before the war, because it was a huge divide that psychologically, you know.
Well, the reason I wanted to ask you is because Phil and I had fun with this issue, and I'm sure that Joyce has too. Is our first book that we wrote together was pre-cell phone.
Oh, that's
Yes. Oh, yes. No.
Yeah, the number of plots that would collapse if the characters had cell phones is just about infinite. The classic
right setting.
Yeah,
there are places where I could take you places where it doesn't matter who your connection is. You have no connectivity, and the only way you're going to call out is if you have a satellite phone.
You know how hard.
Huh?
You know how hard cell phones have made it for mystery writers?
It's awful. You can't hide, and you can take pictures of the evidence of the stuff happening right there. And so there's no debate about the footprints or, the who it was you saw climbing out the window. You just zoom in and you can see who it is. It's embarrassing.
Do you ever follow like Bellingcat and some, like the whole Andrew Tate thing, which,
oh, what a riot.
I mean, that's the thing. If you follow this organization called Bellingcat, they specialize in tracking down pictures where the bad guys are trying to like hide where they're at. They're still getting pictures.
You can look in the background and see that you've got, the phone book or whatever it is for Multnomah County, and there you are.
Yeah. Well, these guys will stand. The Bellingcat can track you down even if you are standing in front of a concrete wall that you think has nothing to reveal, and they will go through and they will show this is how you do it. But ordinary people, you have to learn how to do that kind of tracking and tracing. But that in itself is a new, the mystery has to take a new form. And I think if I were writing mystery, I would be spending a lot more time learning about this process from Bellingcat, but I don't.
One of the reasons I set my mysteries up here on Mount Hood is the fact that our connectivity is spotty at best.
Mm-hmm.
And so cell phones and, we can take the pictures of the evidence, but transmitting them to somebody else is chancy.
Yeah. And there's, if you, in my NetWalk sequence books where my characters are up on Mount Hood skiing, there's at least one scene where the protagonists take advantage and, sister and brother business people talking and negotiating. And it's like, is this one of, the brother says, is this one of your famous low connectivity sites? And she says, oh, yes. So she knows where every one of those are.
Yeah. And well, I'm in the Salmon River Valley, and our connectivity changes from block to block. Oh, just as sunset changes from block to block because of
you out here in northeastern Oregon, if you're going like up north to Buckhorn Lookout, or if you're going out on the rims of the canyon country, it doesn't matter who your cell phone carrier is. For example, we go out on Whitehorse Ridge. There is one turn that looks out over the Imnaha River drainage where you can get a signal. But the rest of the ridge, forget about it. It doesn't matter. You are the mountains. Well, and out here in the Wallowa Valley, I took a National Weather Service Skywatch training, and they said, you're really important out there because our radar cannot see anything in that area under 10,000 feet because of the mountains, the Blue Mountains and the Wallowa Mountains, both.
So that's never going to change. The mountains aren't going to change. They're never going to improve the technology. Am I right? To where you can really do this. Do you realize what that would do if you really wanted to murder somebody?
Well, you can. They did that during the floods 10 years ago or 11 years ago? But they had to bring in a portable transmitter.
Right. A booster.
What was it? Hurricane Sandy on the East Coast took down, it was half the cell towers on the East Coast, which were about a third of the cell towers in the nation, went down during that hurricane. Our local phone services here on the West Coast had just been they were in the middle of upgrading everything when the East Coast went dark as far as cell phone connectivity. All of the crews and the spare parts for our upgrade suddenly got transferred to Massachusetts.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When you can, 10,000 customers in Oregon doesn't beat 2 million customers in the East Coast. So we were almost 6 months where we had to drive 7 miles to to use the cell phone.
Oh yeah, it's the same
Yeah.
way. I still follow there's a Facebook group for where I grew up. I started following it during the big fires in 2020 because the fires were getting close.
Hmm.
And one of the ongoing conversations out there is how on earth do we get connectivity? And it's called the Mohawk Valley after the one in New York. It's just to the north of Eugene and Springfield, north and kind of
Hmm.
east. And it's not, the mountains aren't even as big as the Salmon River Valley Mountains, but they are just enough. And there's not enough that's the other factor is population numbers. If you're in
Yeah.
a place with low connectivity, and it's not with it, there's nothing economic driving the
Hmm.
desire to improve. I mean, here in the Wallowa Valley, we have ranchers who are running central pivot lines. Well, you control those wirelessly. We
Hmm.
have, there's a major um, low income property manager based here, and they put in the first fiber optic line to run their business, and
Yeah.
so there's enough. If you have enough financial incentive for these rural areas, then you get decent connectivity. But if you don't, well, it's kind of like it is in the Mohawk Valley. Well, you go to your cell phone connector and you get a booster, and then you hold your tongue right, and then maybe you go out and you do this or that.
Yeah. It was, there's a writers retreat every year, held up, it's on the West Coast, up beyond Olympia. Uh,
Oh, rainforest.
yeah, yeah,
I like
Rainforest Writers
Montreal.
Retreat. And it really is a retreat. Bob goes every year, and inevitably we're in the middle of co-writing something and we need to talk. We live 200 miles apart, so we are really geared into talking by telephone or Zoom when we collaborate. And up the rainforest, there's one spot that's like 200 yards from the cabins where on Tuesday, if the moon is full, you can stand on one foot and spin and get half a bar of connectivity. And most inconvenient.
Yeah, I mean
Actually,
that's
you stand over, it's a little road that goes down there, and you
Mhm.
stand over the top of the culvert that's running
Uh,
under the asphalt, and somehow it acts as a support mechanism.
but
yeah.
also too in even in urban areas, if you have enough rebar, if you're in a
Yep. In a
building that's
garage.
or in a
Mhm.
garage or someplace, you cannot get out. I mean, there are ways to do this.
Mhm.
They put in, like in subway stations, they have some way to get it so that you can be on the train as you're passing under the Hudson River and you still have connectivity. But mostly it's very difficult. And the problem with in writing books is that unless you're writing a book that's set in 2023, you're always having to explain to people, well, back then, if you were on the subway and it was passing underneath the river, you had no connectivity. Uh,
Mhm.
and now you do, then you didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember it was in Portland. There's a tunnel on
Mhm.
that gets you to Highway 26 to head out to the coast. And if you're in the tunnel, you could not get radio. You,
Right.
have the radio on and you go into the tunnel, dead silence until you emerge again on the other side. And it was in the late 70s that they put some kind of wires through the roof of the tunnel so you can have your radio. You can have
Yeah.
the whole distance.
Eventually, I could see it, in another 50 years, let's say, there won't be anywhere on this planet where you won't have connectivity. Could for just the way the tunnel underneath the mountain is working with radio, I could see them eventually doing this, but it's not happening now. And what that means when you're writing is you're always having to say, what's the status of the tech today?
Yeah. Well, or even like near future, like the Martini Air books I'm doing. One of the ongoing themes is that there is one field that connectivity is iffy. And even in later years, as I start getting towards the end of the 21st century, the connectivity is iffy because it's something in the geology. At that
I can believe that.
You get like a certain concentration of magnetite or this and that. So in the Martini Air books, the Homestead field is always acting up until it gets hardwired. And even then it can be kind of, it's kind of like that's Homestead.
But on what Brenda said, during Hurricane Sandy and for the 6 months afterwards where we had no connectivity on the mountain, AT&T was giving special bonuses for people to transfer to their system, and they would give you a mini tower.
Oh, baby doll, cute.
Yeah, a mini tower which would connect to your cell phone. And
Andrew just commented that he's using coronal mass emissions, or coronal mass ejections, and that's I mean, there's still the huge possibility that you could get the big one like we had in the 19th century, where it
takes down the grid.
Yeah, takes down the grid.
Okay. Yeah, Bob just reminded us we're supposed to be talking about writing. And
we are talking about writing. We are.
Yeah, and we've sort of drifted away from that, but that's what we do anytime the three of us get on Zoom.
Our private Zooms are quite interesting.
Yeah. So we talked about Brenda writing in the 50s and having to explain the lack of technology. And then she adds the fact that the bulk of the action in those two books takes place on the islands in the South China Sea.
Well, I was thinking about that. That in Africa, for instance, technology has essentially skipped over the landline. They don't bother stringing wires across the jungle. They just have cell phones and the satellite. So now a lot of the people who used to be completely isolated from everything, they can get it on their cell phone. They can, look at stock prices or commodity prices. Shall I sell my sorghum today? That kind of a question. And they've completely skipped the landline. So it makes a big economic difference if you have that connectivity. And I could easily see that we're only at the beginning of that big change where everyone really does join together, and it's kind of Wild Westy now. You have weird people starting nasty websites or cyber warfare, Vladimir Putin, and fun with elections. But eventually we're going to find it's going to settle down to be less Wild West, and it'll be better that this is eventually going to be a good thing for the human race. It might take a generation for it to settle down. There we go.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of it. I mean, one of the things, I keep going back to the Martini Air books because I realized I packed so much into that original concept there, the core series, but then there's these alternative possibilities. Connectivity is one of them, mind control technology. And I'm kind of playing around with that right now in the story I'm serializing on my Substack. I just started. But there's also the dealing with agricultural technology and robotics and drones. I mean, I was just looking the other day, they now have weeding robots.
I saw that.
you know, but they're not. I mean, they're not perfect. You have to train them.
Yeah.
You have to, getting back to the main thing, you have to have connectivity.
Mhm.
So
And what that means is that the whole system, once we have it set up, that's where you come in and attack the system. If you were, let us say, invading Russia, you could attack their systems, and suddenly the agriculture goes to pieces because the robots are not weeding the fields anymore.
or the self-driving tractors.
Exactly.
You
Your
know,
self-driving tractors go berserk and plow through Moscow.
or drones.
Yeah.
Drones
Oh,
are drones are a huge thing. I don't know how many people know that Pendleton has a huge near Pendleton. There's a huge drone research facility, and I mean they're doing a lot of drone work out there. In fact, during what's it last year or the year before? During the summer, they started a grass fire because a drone they were testing crashed and burned. Well,
Yeah.
I mean
that
that's
is you could imagine then that imagine war as purely drone against drone, which they're sort of doing in Ukraine right now. And did you know that you can train eagles to attack drones? So
oh yeah,
finally, falconry
Yeah.
will come into its
I've
own as
seen
a
the
war.
photos. You see
Yes,
the photos of those
yes.
that are happening.
oh yeah,
They have to be
you
bigger
know.
eagles.
But getting back to writing, I tend to write in multiple series.
Mhm.
And I think, oh, this is just a trilogy. It's going to end with a trilogy.
Famous last words.
You know, and I'm on book 13, you know, or of whatever. But I was keeping up with the technology. If you're doing a contemporary confession, this is Confessions of a Ballroom Diva, and it came out in 2018.
Mhm.
Now it takes place on a lot of the action is on a television set, and the changes that have
Oh
occurred
yes,
just in 5
it is
years.
amazing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
It's all computerized now. You know, they can look
yeah,
at the rushes in a second, and make
yeah,
you immediately reshoot. You know, get in there and make sure this time she has her corsage on. You know, so
you know,
annoying.
and oh, I do live television in the confession books, and the fourth one, no, the fifth one, whatever, is coming out in February. Confessions of a Changeling Dancer. So I've got Ballroom Diva, Piano Demon, Siren Singer, and now Changeling Dancer. So that's four. Um, they're all demons who are involved in artistic endeavors, and a lot of them circulate around this live TV show. But keeping up with the technology, please, readers, look at the copyright before you judge it for being
Oh,
oh
outdated.
yeah. I mean, it's like one of the reasons I re-released my Netwalk Sequence series this last
Yeah.
year, which is now available on box set, and I've still got sale prices on it. But
Mhm.
was because the first two books were written in the late aughts, and it was
Mhm.
cyberpunk, and it was cyberpunk tech. Ha ha! Guess what? Besides
it's
the
so
cover,
last century now.
Yeah.
yeah. So I had to go in and kind of tweak things a little bit because there were other issues. Interior, something I don't know that a lot of people think about, but interior formatting styles change.
Mhm.
Yes.
Interior formatting styles change. I had 5 different covers that for a 6-book series. I had 5 different cover artists, so I had to
Mhm.
redo all of those.
Homogenize. You had to homogenize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was like this is that book series,
Yeah.
and
Then there's my these books, Test Enquire Adventures, and I haven't had to deal so much with the tech in reviewing those, but I will be reviewing them within the next year as I'm changing publishers. And I'm thinking, what a great opportunity to update them.
But
Mhm.
then it's start rewriting, and then your whole life is gone. You're rewriting these
Right,
things over
right,
and
right.
over.
Yeah.
Oh,
So at
do.
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm only working on my first books, the Dragon books,
Right.
and they're in alternate world,
Right.
magic, fantasy, pure
Right.
fantasy.
And that's easier because at least they don't have cell phones.
Right. You know, and I am just trying not to rewrite them.
It is such a temptation. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm getting the rights to my first novel back, and I'm going to have to look at the text, which I don't want to do because the temptation to go through and fix it is going to be almost insuperable,
Right.
and I don't have time to rewrite them.
Yeah. Now, I have run into a couple of run-on sentences that I've broken up and rewritten. And Brenda is very graciously doing a final proofread on these books for me. And leaving the editing the way Sheila Gilbert of Daw Books did it. She's an amazing editor.
But you know, when there's always a typo, you realize that nothing you can do. Everybody, William Shakespeare on. It doesn't matter. There's always one typo. Sheila is wonderful. I found you typos and I marked them. There's nothing to be done.
Yeah, you know, or you leave out the type. It's just basically I go through and edit and edit and edit.
No,
and
there's always one. There's always one.
Yeah,
and turning it into electronic format leads to difficulties as well.
Yes, it does.
And so you have to be aware of that. But just even if it was perfect when Sheila Gilbert looked at it, there's one that escaped her. You know, it doesn't matter how good you are. There's always one more. So I have found you a few.
You know, or if you don't hit the commands on the computer just right, when you transfer it from one person, you know, from Sheila, the editor, to the person who's formatting it, and in those days it was print only. There were no ebooks back in 1994 when the Glass Dragon came out. They didn't hit ebook until 10, 12 years later. And that whole process of going from one medium to another, from me to Sheila, from Sheila to whoever,
fraught with peril.
You know, and in those days when we got the page proofs to correct, we were only allowed 80 corrections per book. Otherwise, it went over.
To reset.
They have to reset, and it goes over budget. I turned in 120 at least corrections on the Glass Dragon, and they persisted.
Absolutely.
How many editions and how many printings, and then into ebook, because we're working from Daw's version of the ebook, which was then translated into a friend of mine stripped out the DRM and sent it to me as a Word document. And I'm looking at those Word documents, and God, the formatting problems.
You're going to fix it all, and we're going to do the best we can. And there's still going to be typos. I know it to the dying day.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, it's like as someone who self-publishes, I work in Vellum. I love Vellum. And one of the things I love about Vellum is that I can put in one screen, I can see the ebook format, or I can switch to the print format. But I can look at different, not just formats, but on different readers. So I can see what it looks like on a Kindle, the various forms of Kindle, the various Kobo, the various forms of Kobo, even the old Nook reader. And then I can switch over and I can see how things show up in print. And so, but on the other, so I have the view screen. And then I have on the other side, the editing screen. So I can go in and edit as I'm doing it. But
okay.
Format,
Andrew J. Lucas has a comment on the side. Vellum, it's a program for Apple products only.
Yeah, I do know people who write in Vellum, but I don't recommend it. But it is basically Vellum takes your Word document and drops it in to a formatting protocol, and then you go through and tweak that. You can generate, if you're not proofreading, you can generate a decent ebook or print in less than half an hour. Now,
but if it's proprietary to Apple, then all your Android people are out.
you can
all
do
your
it. You
Microsoft
can do
people
it. You can do it Mac and cloud. There are other programs for PC like Atticus, but they are not as far along. I used to do my interiors in Scrivener, and I am so very happy to be away from that. I love Scrivener. I use it for organizing my work and everything, but compiling in Scrivener.
And David Weiss has a comment of, PDF. No,
That's the final.
PDF is what goes to the printer.
Right.
You can't change anything in PDF.
I
And
think
typos are like whack-a-mole. You whack one, you eliminate one, and 6 others crop up.
And the what that means is that you never really get to the final edition. It's not like in the day when they would actually have a different paper edition of David Copperfield or something. What you're having is a continually evolving manuscript that, in a merciful universe, it's actually getting better as you go on. But in actuality, you're right. Sometimes just the change in format generates new errors that have to be dealt with. And so you're constantly trying to get the work into the shape that it needs to be. And very frequently, it's never going to completely be perfect. They haven't yet invented the technology that we're all going to be, the book format that we're all going to be wrestling with in 15 years. And we're going to all transfer our works to that unknown publishing platform. And it'll be a pain in the ass. That I can guarantee us.
Oh yeah.
Well, we've already dropped Mobi as a platform, and that was proprietary to Amazon.
Right.
Everybody else uses PDF, and right from the beginning, I could see that PDF was a more stable program than Mobi, and so that's one thing I'm happy to see. But there are a lot of people out there who still have older Kindles.
Right.
Amazon doesn't like people with older Kindles. They want you to buy a new one.
It is a continual aggravation, and we're as the authors, we're always going to be fighting this one, and it's never going to change because someone's going to invent something, and it'll be so cool. We'll have to go along.
Okay.
Well, and that's, for example, I can just say just about every time that I go to put something in Vellum, I have to run updates because they're, if you have the right formatting program, I mean, beyond Vellum, if you're if you're doing a lot of formatting tricks, I have friends who put out a magazine where they print translations, but they do weird layouts and stuff. They were doing InDesign. Well, InDesign is becoming problematic because they're working in Mac, and InDesign is not has changed to where it doesn't play well with Mac. So now you have to go to Quark Express. But if you are really doing top of the line interiors and you're doing something beyond text, you have to look at programs like InDesign or Quark Express. And
you're practically a software engineer at this point. I should say that
you have to be. Yeah, and when you're moving up to those two programs, you're doing you have to be able to program.
Right.
I should say I'm computer illiterate, and luckily I married a guy who has the degree in science, so he can do all this. But there's a point I can see where writers who are not able to do this are really going to have a problem. You either have to find people who do it for you, or you marry someone who can do it for you.
Right. Fortunately for Brenda and I, we're members of the Bookview Cafe, which is it's a co-op publisher, and our current president or co-president is a control freak as far as formatting goes.
Yes, and it is to have a pool of brains to draw on makes it a
Right.
lot easier, because
Right.
you cannot be bright enough to do everything yourself. When would you have time for writing if you had to pick up all this
Right.
software?
And
I don't
that's
have enough brain power to do the both.
right.
Yeah, well,
And that's what
I'm doing
Jennifer's
all of
getting
it.
in. Yeah, but you have Mac and Vellum.
I have Mac, I have Vellum, I have BookBrush. I mean, for example, this is when got to figure out which side I'm on here. This
Yeah.
one is my book that is coming out in February. I have
Is that the cover?
Yeah, that's the cover.
Okay.
And it's a lot of it is set in Paris.
Yeah, because of the glare from the lights, we can't see the image. We can't see what the image is.
Yeah, I would,
Right.
and it is hard to read at this distance. And the one thing I do know about book covers is they have to look good in thumbnail. Be sure to look at that in thumbnail.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be playing with it, but this
Okay.
is the cover, and you can do things with the back, to reduce the glare.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that may just be
this
it's
is
just the way you're holding that page up. But be sure to
here it is. Here's a little bit better look at it. I'm not completely happy, but I probably will put this
You're going to work on it.
Color that
is a whole separate issue of discussion, is the use of covers, because people do buy the book by the cover. If you're on a Kindle or if you're on Amazon, you look at that thumbnail and that's the judgment you're making before you even read the blurb. So the cover has become more important almost than
it always kind of has been important.
Yeah, it has been very important, particularly in like impulse purchase. You're standing in the bookstore and gee, doesn't that one look attractive? And you reach and you pick it up.
And this is
right. Go ahead, Joyce.
Yeah, this is my last year's release, my most recent one that I'm really kind of proud of this one. I kind of think it's my best one yet, but we'll see. It is the fourth in a series, but it is also designed to be read as a standalone. And one person who reviewed it said, you want older couples, you want to have the unfolding of various things. But the cover, the whole issue with covers, which kind of gets into something that I've been noticing, is that we are seeing some big changes in marketing. It's not just me. I've been talking to a lot of indie writers.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris Rush brings this up in her latest Business Musing column, where she talks about I'll just read the intro here. 2022, the year that advertising stopped working. It's not true, but it feels true. Conversations at the 20 books to 50K conference were all about the broken ad revenues and the inability to goose algorithms. And I think that it doesn't just impact indie writers. It impacts traditional publishing, because especially as we saw in the recent lawsuit with Random Penguin and about the Random Penguin and Simon & Schuster merger, the execs at the companies are not concerned about the lower level, the mid-list writers.
No,
they haven't been for a long time. Phil and Brenda can remember the days when you could make a decent living as a mid-list writer.
Yeah.
And I had friends that were like, basically, we all had friends, turn out 2 books a year. That was a living. We have a friend that made a joke about his work for hire and some of the not for work for hires. Oh, that's Conan the hot tub. That's Conan the new roof.
Yeah.
It is always going to be changing, though. The Christine's worry about how it's changing. It is always doing that. You can never keep on grinding around the way you did it in the past. And I don't know whether her blog post up here. I don't think that you can ever really figure out what's going on unless you spend a lot of time being a marketer. So you can see what we're having to do now. You already have to be able to do software pretty darn good to handle all the software. You have to be quite a good marketer, like Christine Catherine Rush.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be, and of course you have to write the books, otherwise you've got nothing to do.
Right.
That's already more than sort of one person can do.
Right.
And cover design. Let's not even go into cover design. You have to be a good graphic designer, and you have to understand fonts and book cover design. That is a lot of things for a young writer to really be able to grip.
Right, which is one reason why I am so in love with Bookview Cafe, is because we share a lot of all
the other option, if you're not in a cooperative thing, of course, is to hire these things done. You can hire book formatting. It's not it starts to add up rapidly. I don't know if Bob, you're able to make the cover of An Impossible Summer click up. I put it up onto the thing, but I don't know how to make it click. But that one, I hired the cover done. Yeah, there you go. I hired the cover done with an artist who is a friend, and he has been working with you've seen the big controversy about AI book design. Essentially, he's been tinkering with the software that allows you to do that. This, by the way, is a reprint of a YA novel that came out in like 1980. I want to say 1987 or something like that. And it is, the horror. It is a pre-cell phone, pre-internet YA. And so I had to write a new foreword saying, this book was set when your parents were young. Go and talk to them about your cell phone, because they didn't have one then, and these characters don't have one either. So if you're reading it now, there's no point in saying, but why didn't you just get on text and tell her about it? No, it was not going to work out.
Yeah.
And I mean that's that's one of the challenges of being an indie is you either pay for your services or you learn the skills or you swap them out. But when you swap out skills, I was swapping out covers for editing, and then my cover designer, well, she hit a rough patch, but that left me in the lurch. I either had to be able to fork out, well, it was the netwalk covers. And I either had to find somebody fast, put that whole project on the back burner, or learn to do the designs.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And sometimes
it's really challenging.
But the marketing piece, I think, is especially even if you're like part of something like Bookview Cafe, you still have the marketing issue. If you're a traditional publishing, unless you're the very top of the heap, you are still going to need to market your book yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that's one of the things, though, where you sort of, that's Christine is so organized about it. I don't know whether we could be organized to that level. We're just wandering around and saying hi to people, and essentially the equivalent of hand selling. Yeah, essentially that's if you're not a gifted marketer, it's really hard to do it. And a lot of us just can't do that. I don't know how many members of Bookview Cafe will tell you, I know nothing about this and I will never learn, book covers, let us say, or kerning of font on covers, a whole separate issue. Fun. Oh God, you could go into that forever. But there's a limit to what you can do. There's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many brain cells in that skull.
Right.
So at some point you have to bail out.
And you also have to make room in your life for life.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the
and friends.
Your health issues, your spouse issues, the kids getting married. Stuff happens.
You just had to make an emergency trip to the East Coast to get one child married.
Yes.
And then you made made a planned trip to Houston to spend time with your grandchildren.
And then suddenly and then I had knee surgery this year. So essentially the whole year has been shot. I actually am going to post, I made a year ago, because Facebook shows it to you in memories. A year ago, I made a post that said, last year, that's it, say in it's 22 last year. So it was in 2021. I wrote 3 novels. Two of them are the ones coming out this year. And I said, in this coming year, 2022, I don't want to write 3 novels because it sucks too much out of my life. I think I will only write 2. And I didn't. I only wrote 1 because I didn't had all my life stuff sucked out. Surgery, major surgery just sucks out chunks of your life. Family crises with the kids you cannot do anything with. And just chunks of your life vanish out. There's nothing you can do. And that's the reason why, even with your book cover designer, things happen that you cannot control.
Yeah.
You have a heart attack. There's no way to come
I
back.
lost my agent. Of course, he hadn't been doing a whole lot for the previous year. Then he just suddenly disappeared. His Facebook account is canceled. His email bounces.
You never know what's happening. I mean, he could be having a major issue. He could be in jail. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
You're convicted of a crime and you're doing 7 years in Club Fed, and sure, he's not being your agent anymore. He has bigger issues in his life.
Yeah,
Right.
or like I I developed a fast moving cataract.
Absolutely.
I had my cataract removed like the day after Joyce had hers done. I can't wait to do the second.
You guys should have gotten a group rate,
It seems like half my Facebook correspondents are having cataracts on this year.
Right.
But when I said, wow, it's like going from everything being in a crayon font to Arial.
Yeah.
Right.
And writers all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I had to explain it to my eye doctor.
Yeah.
Poor man.
Just the fatigue. That was what, I lost. I had ambitious plans for 2022, but the cataract and the computer, we go to Portland pretty frequently to deal with medical and business and child issues.
It just sucks out enough of your life that you can't. The only solution I think for the independent writer is to find subcontractors to help you with this. The nice thing about traditional publishing is, in theory, you just send that Word document to Sheila Gilbert or whoever, and then Sheila has all those headaches, and then at some point you roll by with the page proofs or the cover approval or whatever it is, and that's it.
Things happen
Takes care of the kerning on the covers.
Yeah. I'm in the process of sending all of my papers to a university library for archiving.
Did you talk to what's his name at Iowa?
Yeah, they're all going to University of Iowa.
Yes, so are mine.
We've had a glitch in getting the labels printed, but
but that's okay.
In the next 2 weeks, I expect to remove close to 1,000 pounds of paper
out of your life
in my house. And you can tell when we went from typesetting, somebody in the Orient sits on a typewriter and retypes your book, to when they accepted my disc or my email of a manuscript and they just plugged it into a program.
Right.
The number of typos went from almost 200 to 12.
Lovely. So technology is a good thing. This is very good.
Right. Yeah. And in the papers, sending my page proofs back, there's a little sticky tab on every one of the pages that requires a change. And on some of them, it's like almost every page, or they come in clusters. And Sheila told me, says that's when they changed shift and a new typist took over.
Right. The reason that we're sort of on the cusp generation of this, you still have paper manuscripts. So did I. But you can see it. We're on that divide where there are no more paper manuscripts. They're not going to be able to do what they are able to do with Charles Dickens and look at the drafts of Great Expectations and see where he changed it. He fixed it because of reader expectations, or people wrote in and said, Chuck, people do not spontaneously combust the way you did it in Bleak House, and
Right.
debate ensues, and he goes in and fixes it. But people are not going to be able to write PhD theses about our later books. They can write it about our earlier books because they can look at the paper.
I'm sending a flash drive with
Really?
all this paper,
Yeah.
of all my digital books.
You have to hope then that they have the technology to read that flash drive. You can
Right.
imagine it in future time where they're saying, but the trend now is all telepathy. What am I going to do with this little thing? Is it a sex toy? And
Yeah.
it's going to be tough.
Bob is signaling that we're down to just a few minutes.
Really? Are we? What
Yeah.
happened to the time?
Yeah.
It's normal. But that's what happens with this.
Yeah. So Bob is going to steal the show right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Hey, guys, and I tell you what, it is like stealing because you're doing such a great job. I feel like I'm not only stealing from you guys in terms of time, but stealing from the audience in terms of an incredible talk. But very quickly, what's your next book and when's it coming out, Brenda?
The reprint of An Impossible Summer, I think, is coming out pretty soon. The 2 World War II novels, A Door in His Head and A Deal in His Pocket, are coming out in the spring. I want to say April, May, or something like that. And I will announce it all to the best of my ability. And I'm writing right now. I'm writing a 12th Marion novel. I wrote 11 of them, and you can Google on my name, and the first volume is free, like all good entry-level drugs. Think of me as Walter White. I'll give you 1 free sample. And then if you're hooked, there's 11, soon to be 12 of them in all.
Okay. Joyce, what are you up to?
Well, the book that I showed this for, A Different Life, Now, Always, Forever, is coming out on February 7th.
Yay.
I'm currently serializing another Martini or multiverse that is a totally different universe from that one on my Substack. I'm working on a far future space opera with cowboys, with a cowboy, called Federation Cowboy, that will first appear on Kindle Vella and then probably will come out in ebook and paperback later on this year. Plus, I'm releasing some things that I only put out in ebook and paperback this spring. I sat down yesterday and made my whole schedule, because that's the secret to independent publishing. You run your publishing schedule.
Yeah. I have Confessions of a Changeling Dancer, which is the 4th book in the Artistic Demons series. It's coming out February 21st from the Bookview Cafe in both print and ebook. And I am currently working on my 50th book. It's called Family. Yeah, it's called Family Bedrock, and it's a spin-off of the Tess Nonquare adventures, which is in this series. It's Tess appears in the book. She has a cameo role, but it's really about a whole new family, and it's an homage to the con culture.
And is it coming out from DAW?
No, I have severed ties with DAW, which is why I have 20 backlist books to proofread and re-release through Bookview Cafe.
Yum, yum, yum.
And just this morning, I sent you the 3rd one.
I will. Yep. I'm trucking through them all.
Yeah. Okay.
Those typos, we'll get them yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to go.
Well, but before I go, I just wanted to remind y'all. Last year we put out alternative. Oh, wait, Phil, you weren't.
Nope, she's gone.
Go yet.
She's gone.
She did. We put out alternative holidays, and we had so many good stories left over that Karen Anderson was kind enough to put together a cover for holiday leftovers. Now, I don't know why, but I loved holiday leftovers because it was quirkier than alternative holidays. And it went in 2 weeks, it went to my basically my top 10 book list of sales that we had. And that was in 2 weeks. So if you get a chance, pick up Holiday Leftovers. It's a fun book. And I'd like to thank even Phil, who left, you guys for coming. And don't you guys leave, because I had a short chat I wanted to have with you afterwards. But we're going to say goodbye to our folks, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.